Hi, so this is my day 2 in मैं भी बनूंगा कंटेंट क्रिएटर चैलेंज एंड टुडे आई जस्ट वांटेड टू शेयर अ फ्यू थिंग्स विथ यू. मैं ये क्यों कर रहा हूँ चैलेंज, क्या है इसके पीछे का मोटिव एंड टुडेज टॉपिक्स. So first things first, I am doing this challenge to groom myself as a content creator. There are a lot of topics which I want to talk about. There's a lot of research which I want to share with you. And fundamentally, जो मैं बार बार बोलते रहता हूँ कि our choices define our destiny. I very strongly believe that by being better decision makers, all of us can ensure a better life for all of us, not just individually, but also for our families, but also for our society, for our nation state, and ultimately for the entire human civilization. Uh, a big part of that journey can only be completed if I become a good content creator, because all my research is worthless if I cannot share that with you in a format with uh, in a format which you won't like it, right? So this challenge is my experiment to become a better content creator. There are a couple of things which I'm going to experiment with. First is so there will be some videos which will be scripted and prepared for, like the yesterday's video, and then there will be certain videos which are completely unprepared for and which are completely unscripted, like this one, and I'm sure you already have catched on to that. There will be some videos where you won't see my face at all. So all of these are experiments that I'll probably be running to experiment with different formats of content, to experiment with different types of presentation, and to see which type of content, which format of content works best. Because ultimately it doesn't matter what I enjoy doing the most. What matters is what helps you the most. So that is essentially what I'm going to try, and this is also my way of learning, right? So when I experiment with things, when I do things myself, that is where I learn the most. So that is essentially the reason behind this challenge. Yes, it is going to be very difficult, probably, to maintain that consistency, to upload one video every day. But I'm also hoping that all of you, my dear friends, will keep me accountable, and I am giving you full freedom to spam my inbox on WhatsApp, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on emails, on messages, whichever way you can spam me. If I miss even one day of uploading this video, uh, so that is about the challenge. Today I'm going to talk about uh, three very important things. One, why I've decided to anchor my entire life and my research around this core concept of decision making. Second, what are the 5 levels of decision making, which I constantly keep on talking about in all the intros as well. And whomsoever I've talked to, I always keep on mentioning our experience of reality gets constructed on these 5 levels of decision making. And third is, which I've talked about to a few of you, but not every one of you, which is 5 building blocks of decision making. Uh, and at the end of the video, as a bonus, I'm going to give a very small demonstration of how the combination of these 5 levels of decision making and 5 building blocks of decision making actually help us decode the entire reality around us, right from the identity crisis that is happening in the West, where boys want to be identified as girls and girls want to be identified as groups. All this entire game of selecting our own pronouns, uh, to how the world of geopolitics works, and why there is this massive wave of de-dollarization which is coming up. So if we want to analyze, if we want to understand, if we want to decode any event that is happening around us, I am going to give you a demonstration of how these 5 levels of decision making and 5 building blocks of decision making essentially help us do exactly that. It goes without saying that this is a purely unscripted video. This is purely a unprepared video. So I'm so sorry if I'm going to. I know I'm going to fumble a lot. I know I'm going to stumble a lot, but I'm not going to edit anything out of it. I just want to get out of my comfort zone. I just want to be comfortable talking to a camera, because I need to understand and I need to internalize that it's not just a camera that I'm talking about, but I'm talking to all of you through the medium of this camera. So this is my conscious decision for today, that I'm not going to edit even a single second of this video, and I'm just going to lay bare myself and my entire philosophy of why decision making is important and how studying decision making essentially helps us decode everything that is happening around us. So let's jump into today's discussion. First things first, why did I decide to anchor my entire life around this core concept of decision making? Uh, so my entire journey of studying decision making actually started around 2 years ago. I was building a company with a group of very close friends, and we were doing something very interesting. We experimented with a lot of ideas, but after having gone through a lot of rough patches throughout COVID, there came a time where we started having a lot of disagreements, mainly on how to run the business, which direction to choose, and generally a lot of disagreements on the business decisions that we were making. And the situation became such that I was not enjoying the process of building that company anymore. Um, and I started to get that very deep sense of feeling that I cannot continue building this company. Uh, but at the same time, I also knew that I had put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into building this company, and not just me, all of us, all the four founders that we were, we put in a lot of hard work into building this company, and being one of the founders, it's not as easy as quitting a job, right? Where you just put your resignation letter and after serving your notice period you're out. It's not that easy. So it was a very difficult situation where I knew I could not continue building this company, but uh, I also knew that getting out of this company is not going to be very easy. Not for me personally, but also for the company at large. So it was a very difficult situation, and I had no idea how to make this choice. I went off to Goa for a few days just because I wanted to get out of Pune and physically run away to a space where I can think freely, and that is essentially where a very good friend of mine also suggested a book. I still have that book. The book is called The Art of Thinking Clearly. I have the book. Yeah. This is that book. It's called The Art of Thinking Clearly. So this book basically talks about around 100 different cognitive biases which affect our decision making. And while reading this book, I realized that okay, there is this concept called decision making, which people are actively studying. And so I got interested. I started reading a bit more. Uh, that is essentially also when something else clicked me. My first job was in a company called Mu Sigma, where my designation, so to speak, was trainee decision scientist. And I remember our founder, Dheeraj Rajaram, conducting this town hall once, talking about the science of decision making. And so all of these dots started connecting slowly and steadily. I I always had a fascination for reading papers. I was always interested in a wide variety of topics. I used to read a lot about uh, successful business people. I used to read a lot about politics. I used to read a lot about what is happening in society. I was always fascinated with the world of psychology. Interesting fact, I am an engineer on paper, but before I secured my admission in an engineering college, I had actually applied for a seat in Ferguson College for BSc in psychology. I still regret that decision of not pursuing psychology in education. But having said that, whenever I used to read papers, I used to read all sorts of news where the news would say that मोदी जी ने ये डिसीजन ले लिया, जयशंकर जी ने ये डिसीजन ले लिया, आरबीआई ने ये डिसीजन ले लिया, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये डिसीजन ले लिया, टाटाज ने ये डिसीजन ले लिया, साइरस मिस्त्री को फायर करने का डिसीजन ले लिया, so on and so forth. And all of these different news items from different areas of our life all had this one word which was called decisions. Then I used to always, I also fascinate myself. I also find a very niche area of YouTube content very fascinating. So there's this game called Minecraft. It's an open source world where you can actually build whatever you want to build. And there's a lot of very good Minecraft streamers who have actually cracked this art of entertainment on demand, where they've created like a web series kind of content which is based on this gameplay of Minecraft. And even they used to keep on talking about the different block palettes that they are selecting and the decisions of what builds they want to make or what characters they want to play, so on and so forth. Even when we are even when I used to watch movies, this one word decision constantly kept coming in front of me, which of course piqued my interest, and that is essentially where I went down deep down the rabbit hole of this idea called decision making. And slowly and steadily, what I realized is whatever world we are living in right now, it's a sum product of the decisions that were made in the past, right? So when we look at history, for example, I started asking very interesting questions. Interesting for me. For example, why did Gandhiji decide that he wanted to adopt the path of Satyagraha and Ahimsa to lead this entire movement against the British Raj? On the contrary, why did Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose decide to take up arms and lead the freedom struggle through the way of armed conflict? Now, both of these decisions had the same intent, that the British who are occupying our country should leave, we should become an independent country, and we should have our own governments, so on and so forth. But both of them made radically different decisions in terms of how to get independence from the British. And rest is history, right? Gandhiji became Mahatma, Netaji, whatever happened with Netaji, that's a separate topic altogether. But if we look into past and if we look at what is happening right now, all of these are consequences of decisions which were made a few days ago, a few months ago, a few years ago, a few decades ago, a few centuries ago, right? What if Shivaji Maharaj had not decided to take the pledge, take the oath of establishing the Swaraj in Maharashtra and in India, to be more precise, right? We wouldn't have seen the emergence of Maratha Empire, which essentially defeated the Islam Empire, and we would not have been living in the reality that we are living in right now. Let's take simpler examples, right? Just like I mentioned a few moments ago, I still regret that decision of not going for BSc Psychology and instead going for my engineering degree. I think all of us at some point or the other have always wondered, what if I had done this instead of doing this? What if I had said this instead of saying this? What if I had done what if I had done this X amount of work instead of taking that trip? Or what if I had taken that vacation instead of slogging my butt off in office, right? All of these what if questions essentially are reflections of the decisions that we've made in the past, which have brought us to the present moment in the reality. And we're just questioning whether those decisions in the past were good decisions or bad decisions, and what different consequences we would have seen in our lives if we had made some different decisions. There's this very interesting movie called The Butterfly Effect, which essentially dives deep into the same concept, where Ashton Kutcher plays the lead role and he's living a very difficult life, and he constantly keeps on thinking that I should change this part of my life, and then he's got this magic diary where he can write that okay, I want to change this part of my life in the past, and his entire life in the future changes, right? So I think when I started connecting all of these dots, it became very clear to me that whatever we are experiencing as our reality is a sum product of our decisions, of the decisions that we are making. And if you really have to build a future which is predictable and build a reality which is much better than what we are experiencing right now, if we want to solve the problems that we see in our current experience of reality, all we really need to do is focus on the decisions that we are making. And that is essentially why I anchored my entire life around this concept of decision making, because I believe that is one real constant across the entire timeline of human existence, and it will remain so. Even if we go even if we go 100 years from now, right, we'll still be making decisions. I'm not sure what kind of bodies we'll be living in, what kind of societies we'll be living in, what kind of national boundaries we'll be living in. I don't know if Elon Musk will actually be successful in settling civilization on Mars, and whether we'll be a interplanetary civilization 100 years from now. In all possibilities, we would be. I'm not sure whether, in that case, I'm not sure whether we'll be living on Earth, or we'll be living on Mars, or we'll be living on Moon, or some other planet completely. But I know one thing for sure. One thing that will never change is the decisions that we are making. And this becomes even more relevant in today's times, because all the algorithms that exist in our life, the social media networks, YouTube, Google, Facebook, all of these digital platforms, they are altering our decisions in a lot of conscious and subconscious ways, right? So when we talk about privacy laws, right? When we talk about data privacy, when we talk about how Google and Amazon and Facebook are tracking millions of data points, supposedly to run their recommendation engines and ad engines. Essentially, what they're doing is trying to influence our decisions in terms of what kind of products we purchase, what kind of music do we listen to, what kind of movies do we watch, what kind of videos do we watch, what kind of tweets do we respond to, and in effect, these algorithms are also shaping our worldview, right? If you look at the entire Facebook and Cambridge Analytica case, that entire case was around how Facebook leveraged the data that it had captured for all of its billions of users to essentially manipulate our decision of who are we voting for, right? If you look at the entire case of Donald Trump and the entire Russia collusion theory and the election interference game, all of this boils down to how these algorithms are essentially being used to shape and manipulate our decision of who we are voting for. And this is very important because the people that we vote for are making decisions for us by being a part of the governments, elected governments, right? So when Mr. Narendra Modi is making certain kind of decisions as the Prime Minister of India, it's not a decision he is making for himself. It's a decision he is making on the behalf of the entire country. Which is why in all of his speeches he keeps on referring to the citizen as mitro or mere deshwasiyo or mere parivarwasiyo, because the decisions that he's making is on the behalf of all the 1.4 billion uh, citizen and residents of this country called India. And it was our choice to vote him to power with absolute majority in Lok Sabha, which gives him his political strength to do all the reforms that he wants to do. To sum it all up, this is essentially why I have chosen to anchor my life and all my research around this core concept of decision making, and this is why I feel it's very important. Which brings me to the second point. चलो ये decision making वगैरह तो सब सही है, but everybody is making decisions. I am making decisions, you are making decisions, Google is making decisions, Modi is making decisions, everybody is making decisions. If we start analyzing and decoding all of these decisions in isolation, we'll go crazy, because then we'll have to analyze the decisions being made by all the 8 billion of us, right? Which is humanly impossible. Even if we deploy the best of algorithms and if we develop the best of AI to analyze these decisions, it still needs some structure, right? This is what brings me to the 5 levels of decision making which are affecting our reality. So let's break it down. Let's start from the smallest unit, which is an individual, right? Which is the level 1 of decision making, the decisions which we are making for ourselves. So these decisions are our education choices, right? Whether we are choosing science, arts, commerce as a stream of our education, which further drills down to whether we are going for BSc programs or BTech or BE programs or some kind of other programs under science stream, or if we are going for BCom or BBA or these kind of streams, or if we are going for a BA stream, right? Where essentially we are picking up certain amount of skill sets and specialized knowledge in one area of study, whether it's arts related, commerce related, or science related. All of these are education related decisions that we are making for ourselves, right? We are not making this decision for someone else. Another example is the career choices we are making, whether we are doing a job or we are starting a business, or we are becoming a teacher, a professor, a content creator. All of these career choices, again, we are making for ourselves. Our personal finance, our lifestyle choices, our relationship choices, all of these are examples of decisions that we are making for ourselves, right? The fun starts when we migrate to level 2, right? Level 2 is where we start making decisions as teams. For example, our families, right? We make certain decisions as a family. We make certain decisions as a group of friends. When we look at the entire spectrum of business management, we are constantly making decisions as teams, right? That is essentially why we also have a team lead. So we have marketing teams, we have product teams, we have data science teams, we have hiring teams, we have sales teams, and different teams, and we are making these decisions as teams, right? If we look at the world of sports, there are different. We are again making decisions as teams. If you look at our cricket team, right? So it's a team of 11 people who are playing that game, representing the nation, of course, or maybe different clubs or different states. If we go into different tier of competitions, but again, we are making decisions as teams. We also have a selection team, which is again deciding who will be our playing 11, who will be our reserve bench, who will be our substitutes for that tournament, so on and so forth. And the same applies for different sports. If we go to cricket, we go to football, we go to basketball, we go to athletics. All of these are decisions we are making essentially as teams. Level 3 is where we start making decisions as a society, right? This is essentially where governance related matters start playing a role. So what are these decisions looking like? So the simplest example is elections, right? When we are voting someone to power, it's a decision we are making as a society. Yes, there is a decision we are making as an individual on in terms of who to vote for, right? But it's the entire society which elects someone to power. One person's vote generally does not matter, and even our decision to vote is influenced by a certain set of factors. It's not really our own individual choice, right? Because we are a part of community, and even if you look at the political campaigning, political marketing, it's not targeted. It's not targeted to us as an individual, right? It's targeted towards a section of our society, uh, and then the society essentially votes for that particular politician. That's essentially where the concept of vote bank comes into play, right? Where certain sections of society are guaranteed to vote for a certain political party based on a wide variety of factors like your ideology or uh, political ideology, social ideology, so on and so forth. So again, elections is like the simplest example of the decision we are making as a society. Other decisions that we are making as a society, which are typically not talked about a lot, are lobbying, for example, where as a society we have certain needs, we have certain demands, uh, which we want the government of the day to provide for. It may be a local government, it may be a state government, it may be the central government, or it may be certain bodies of the government. Uh, so we decide to pool our strength together as a society and lobby for our demands. So what happened with the farmers' protests, is an example of society demanding that we don't, a section of the society demanding that we don't want these new laws to be enacted. Or what happened during the India against corruption movement, right? The entire society launched this massive protest to demand that we want a government which will act tough on corruption. So, again, protests is a format of uh, the society presenting its demands and projecting strength of the demand. Because one thing which I would definitely like to explore further in one of the upcoming videos is how political decisions are being made. Right? It's a simple negotiation between what the society demands and what the state is ready to grant. So that is how political decisions or policy decisions are being made. So, to zooming out, these are certain examples of how we are making decisions as a society. The next level is just something that I touched upon in the last example, the decisions we are making as a nation state, right? Where the central government or the state governments both come into play. India as a nation is making certain decisions. Maharashtra as a state is making certain decisions. Gujarat as a state is making certain decisions. Uh, Ultimately, the state governments and the central government represent the governance structure of the entire country. It's a federal structure of governance, uh, where the power of decision making is essentially distributed across these two layers, primarily of decision making. And if you look into India's constitution, there is a state list, and then there is a central list, and then there's a concurrent list, so on and so forth, which essentially talks about this distribution of power. But this is the fourth level of decision making, where we start making decisions as nation states. And it's not just the governments who are responsible for these kind of decisions. When we look at judicial bodies like the courts of our country, the Supreme Court, the High Court, the district courts, all of these are making decisions with national interest. Uh, when we look at regulatory bodies like RBI, SEBI, IRDA, all of these are regulatory bodies which are making decisions in the national interest. When we look at investigative agencies like your CBI, your ED, all of these agencies are also making decisions in the national interest. When we look at our armed forces, our army, our navy, our air force, uh, even they are making a lot of decisions every day, and all of these decisions are again in the national interest. So all of these different embodiments of nation state are making decisions in national interest, which represent the fourth level of decision making. And the fifth level of decision making is the global decisions which we make, uh, or the decisions which we make in the interest of the entire civilization, right? This is a space where essentially bodies like UN, WHO, IMF, WTO, all of these different bodies are ideally supposed to make decisions, which are decisions in global interest, which is the interest of the entire human civilization, all the 8 billion of us. Whether they do that job in complete fairness or not, that's a different debate altogether. Uh, but this is the level 5 decision. So, another manifestation of this is also your international groupings like BRICS, SEO, G20, NATO, right? All of these are international groupings, international alliances, uh, again, which are making certain decisions with a certain degree of global interest in mind. Right now, we don't have a concept of a global government in picture. Maybe in future we may have something similar to it. If you look at what is the agenda of the World Economic Forum and their entire proposed theory of the Great Reset, there are a lot of uh, expert opinions which say that what this entire project is geared towards is to establish a world government. Whether we will see a world government or not, it's a different matter altogether. But yeah, that is level 5 of decision making, where we are making decisions uh, with global interest or for the interest of the entire human civilization. So, just to summarize, these are the 5 levels of decision making: the decisions we make for ourselves, the decisions we make as teams, the decisions we make as society, the decisions we make as a nation state, and the decisions which we make for the entire civilization. If you look at the history of human species at large, uh, this is how we have evolved as well, where we started. So we, of course, so a few thousand years ago or million years ago, where we were a very small species on this planet, where we were probably just individual units. But slowly and steadily, we started coming together. We started forming groups where we started collectively taking care of each other. We always keep on saying a human being is a social animal. So that is essential. So these 5 levels essentially represent our human evolution as well, from an individual to a civilization, where we form collectives to pool in our strength and to increase the longevity of our human species at large. Having said that, only dividing the decisions we are making across these 5 levels, in my view, is not sufficient. Uh, and I started questioning that, okay, चलो what और how तो पता चल गया कि चलो हम लोग क्या डिसीजन ले रहे हैं और कैसे डिसीजन, कहाँ पे डिसीजन ले रहे हैं, कौन से लेवल पे डिसीजन ले रहे हैं. ये 5 लेवल से तो पता चलता है, बट हाउ आर वी मेकिंग दीज डिसीजंस एक्चुअली, कैसे ले रहे हैं हम लोग ये डिसीजन? दैट इज़ समथिंग विच आई constantly keep on inquiring, and after a lot of research and a lot of distillation, what I realized is, as we have these 5 levels of decision making, we also have 5 building blocks of decision making, and funnily these 5 building blocks apply to all the 5 levels of decision making, and I'll show you how. The first important building block of our decision making is our sense of identity, right? Let's look at ourselves again. My name is Prathamesh Gosari. My first name was given to me by my parents. My family name is my family name, and both of them combined forms my first layer of identity, right? My name is Prathamesh Gosari. It's my first layer of identity. I am a male. I am 30-year-old, which means I am a young adult. That again becomes another layer of my identity. I belong to a city called Pune, and therefore I am a Punekar, which is again another layer of my identity. Pune is a city which falls under the state of Maharashtra. So I'm a Maharashtrian whose uh, whose home language or who speaks Marathi. So I'm a Marathi guy and I'm a Maharashtrian. So both of these again form another layers of my identity. On paper, I'm an engineer. I've also done my MBA, and now I'm into running my own business. So I'm a startup founder. All of these are layers of my identity. I also belong to this country called India. Therefore, I'm an Indian. I'm a very patriotic Indian. I love my country, and even after having a lot of choices in terms of going outside the country for study purposes, for job, I decided consciously all the times to stay back in my country and contribute all my effort in terms of building this country. So, being an Indian and a patriotic, proud Indian at that are again layers of my identity. Similarly, our religion, our faith, our jobs, our perceptions, the clothes we wear, the kind of money we earn, the kind of life we live, the kind of perception we have about the world. All of these are different layers of our identity. If you really start peeling all these layers down, uh, maybe throughout our lifetime, we I think we easily accumulate hundreds of layers of identity, right? I'm a cricket fan, I'm a football fan, I'm a Manchester United supporter, I'm a Arsenal supporter, I'm a Lakers supporter, I'm a Virat Kohli fan, I'm a Hrithik Roshan fan, I'm a Shah Rukh Khan fan. All of these different layers, all of these different aspects of our life, essentially at one point or the other, uh, become a part of our identity, because that is how the world perceives us and that is how we perceive ourselves as well. That's not the case only for ourselves. The same thing applies for all the five levels as well. When we look at families, even families have identities, right? Which is denoted by our family name. Uh, the work we do, the assets we build, the liabilities we build, the relationships we build, the kind of life we live, the kind of service we do as a family across multiple generations add more and more layers to our family. When we look at Ambani as a family, it's a business family, right? When we look at Rahul Gandhi's as a family, they are a political family, uh, and a lot of other qualitative attributes which we can assign to family as an identity. Same applies for teams, right? Same applies for cricket teams and football teams and kabaddi teams and all the other sports that we play, where the team also has an identity. We've got Mumbai Indians and Kolkata Knight Riders and Manchester United, Arsenal. All of these are identities for that team. The players may come and go, but the identity of the team remains for a long period of time. When we go into the world of business, we have brand identity, we have corporate identity, where the company has a name, where the brand has a name, right? And the brand has some certain attributes, the company has certain attributes which are defining its identity. The same applies at the level of society. The same applies at the level of country, where we have India and Pakistan and America and United Kingdom and Australia. All of these represent identities of nation states. When we look at the level of civilization, we had the ancient Egyptian civilization and the Mayan civilization and the Inca civilization. In today's world, we have the Western civilization, we have the Indian or the Hindu civilization or the Bharatiya civilization. China exerts its civilizational identity of being a Middle Kingdom empire. Russia exerts its civilizational identity Unfortunately, we don't have one common civilizational identity for all the 8 billion of us, which is a challenge, which is a problem which we'll probably uh, hopefully solve sometime in future. But having said that, uh, from self to civilization, all of us have a certain sense of identity, which forms our first building block of decision making. The second building block of our decision making is personality, which is the set of behaviors and emotions and logic and intellect that we apply, right? When we talk about personalities, we constantly keep on talking about, we constantly attribute whether someone has a strong personality or a weak personality, where someone is an optimist, someone is a pessimist. Uh, all of these are different forms of personality. An individual has a personality, a team has a personality, a society has a personality, a nation has a personality, and civilizations also have personalities. The third building block, and probably one of the most important building blocks, is purpose. What is the purpose of your life? What are you born for? When we talk about purpose, it's essentially a very long term motivational arc of our life, right? A purpose is not for a year, purpose is for decades, a purpose is for centuries. When we talk about the purpose of an individual, it is probably for a few decades. But when we are talking about purpose for any of the other 4 levels, we are talking about very different time scales. A business is called a going concern, and a business always has a purpose, which is why it exists. And when we talk about business being a going concern, the business essentially is expected to last beyond the lifetimes of the founders and the promoters and all the employees combined, right? The largest surviving, the eldest company, if I may put it that way, I think it belongs to Japan, and this company is actually some 500 years old. It's the same company, the same brand name for 500 years long, right? The same applies for society. Society has a purpose which lasts beyond generations. The nation has a purpose which lasts beyond centuries, and the civilization has purpose which lasts beyond centuries, because civilization essentially affects the health of the entire species at large. So that's the third building block, which is our purpose. The fourth important building block is motivation, which is much more short term. Motivation is always short term. It may be from a few days to a few weeks to a few months to a few years old at the max. Again, applies equally for an individual, equally for a business, equally for a society, for a nation state, and for a civilization. As an individual, my purpose may be to help as many people as I can to become better decision makers. But my short term motivation is to make a certain amount of cash flow to make this business sustainable. Because if I don't make this business sustainable, I cannot, in all possibilities and in all practicalities, uh, expect to help more than a few hundred people, right? So that's the difference between purpose and motivation. Same applies for businesses. The business may have a purpose to become a global empire for furniture, but the short-term motivation may be to tide the way of COVID and make sure that the business is not destroyed. Same applies for society, same applies for nation state, same applies for civilizations. And the fifth building block of our decision making is trade. Trade signals nothing but the value we create and the value we consume. As I said earlier, a human being is a social animal, right? Throughout our entire history of evolution, we have grown to grown from being a individual animal to a social animal, where we have evolved from being an individual to a small group to a family to a society to a nation state to a civilization. And when we are talking about being social animals, uh, the success of society lies in efficient division of labor, where not everyone is doing the same job and not everyone is doing all the jobs, right? The society becomes efficient with good division of labor, where that is essentially where even the idea of business comes from. Not one company can be expert in doing everything. Uh, so one company specializes in doing certain things, the other company specializes in doing certain things, which is also where the entire philosophy of value chain comes from, right? Uh, so if there is a if one person excels in teaching something, the other person excels in building something, the other person excels in farming vegetables, right? And all of these jobs per se are essentially nothing but the value that we are creating for people around us, the value we are exchanging for the people around us. Because all of us need food to eat, but not all of us grow our own food. It is limited to a certain section of our society, which is called farmers, who are producing all the food which is needed for the entire nation state and eventually for the entire civilization, right? But to consume that food, we need to buy that food. To buy that food, we need money. To earn that money, we are doing certain else. We are doing certain job. So a sum of all the skills that we have translate into the value which we can create, and to create that value we also need to consume value. That is what our trade signals. Now it is very easy to confuse between the trade and identity, because when we say, chalo, let's take an example of a lawyer, right? Lawyer is a part of our identity. You can be a very specialized lawyer, that where you specialize in, say, criminal law, you can specialize in corporate law, you can specialize in constitutional matters. That becomes a part of your identity, but it also represents the trade that you specialize in, that you can deal with cases in whatever tier of courts around those particular matters of law, right? And these jobs that we do definitely direct and influence a lot of decisions we make. The same thing applies for businesses, because businesses are in certain trade. You may be trading manufactured goods, you may be trading in IT services, you may be trading in 10-minute deliveries, you may be trading in farm produce, you may be trading in financial products. A lot of the decisions that you will make as a business will depend on the trade that you are in. The same applies for a society, the same applies for a nation state, the same applies for civilizations at large. Where India has a certain trade profile and it is making certain policy decisions to improve that trade profile, right? When we talk about policy decisions around import substitution, for example, it's nothing but an attempt to balance out our trade profile, where we can reduce our imports to a certain extent and substitute them with domestic manufacturing. So to summarize, these are the 5 building blocks of all our decisions that we are making. The first is our sense of identity. Second is our personality. Third is our purpose. Fourth is our motivation. Fifth is our trade. I hope it's not been overwhelming for you to this time, because let's do a fun experiment. Okay? I had mentioned that by the end of this video, and I promise you we are at the end of this video. I'll give you a small demonstration of how to use these 5 levels and how to use these 5 building blocks to decode the world around us. Let's take the example of the identity crisis that is happening in the West, right? Where boys want to be identified as girls and girls want to be identified as uh, groups. So if you go back to the 5 levels and the five decision making blocks, it's a clear cut problem which focuses on level 1, which is self, and the first building block, which is identity, right? uh, the reasons why this has become a challenge, it needs a lot of deeper analysis, but it's a problem dealing with decisions for self and problems dealing with the first building block, which is identity. And this entire crisis, to summarize, is come out because we have started rejecting a lot of layers of our identity for a variety of reasons, where we have made certain labels and certain layers of our identity unacceptable as a society, or we have incentivized certain behaviors which want us to accept certain layers of identity more than what we currently have. If you look at the entire culture war, if you look at the entire aggressive expansionist behavior of Christianity and Islam in the last 2000 centuries, one common feature that you will see is destruction of uh, cultural landmarks, which is destroying your libraries, destroying your temples, destroying your social places, community halls, so on and so forth. Because again, the idea was, if I am able to destroy your sense of identity, I will be much more capable of manipulating your decisions, because your identity is your first fundamental block of decision making. Similarly, if you look at all the separatist movements which used to happen, which were a common feature of Jammu and Kashmir for a long time, or which recently erupted in Manipur, it's a problem of, it deals with level 3 of decision making, where we are making decisions as a society, and it's a problem of purpose, where these sections of our society deem their purpose to be one very simple thing, that this area of land has to become an independent country and we want to rule by ourselves. We want to reject the nation state, we want to reject the nationality of this piece of land, we want to reject the governance structure which administers this piece of land, for whatever reasons. These might be historical reasons, true or false, doesn't matter. But these certain sections of the society make it their life's purpose to try and separate or carve out this piece of land outside of the nation state which is currently administrating it. Right? The same applied for the militancy in Jammu and Kashmir. The same is happening inside Manipur right now, which is the primary conflict between the Kuki and Meitei communities. And I promise I'm going to do a very deep dive video on this entire Manipur crisis. But this crisis of militancy, this crisis of separatist movements all across the globe are, if we want to decode why is happening and what is happening here, it relates to level 3 of decision making, which is the decisions we are making as a society, and the third building block, which is purpose. If you look at Putin's war in Ukraine, these were decisions made by nation states, by Ukraine, and so the two nation states involved primarily are Ukraine and Russia. So level 4 of decision making, nation state. And this war or this armed conflict essentially was coming out of a short-term motivation, a clash between a short-term motivation and and the purpose, but more of short-term motivation. Where Ukraine essentially wanted to join NATO, and Russia did not accept that, because Russia does not want NATO on its borders. Also because Ukraine is Ukraine is one country which is very Ukraine is right on the shores of Black Sea, which is one of the most important trading routes for Russia. It's the most important access point for Russia to a wide variety of markets. And if NATO comes to Ukraine, NATO will get access to Black Sea. NATO will get military influence over Black Sea, which Russia did not want. So the entire Russia-Ukraine conflict, if we want to decode it, if we want to analyze it, it's a level 4 decisions by nation states, and the primary area that we have, the primary building block that we need to look into is motivations, because these are short-term motivations. And if we look at the establishment of Quad is a level 5 decision. It's an international grouping. And the building block that we'll have to look into primarily is trade, because the primary goal of establishing Quad was to monitor the most important trading route of this world, which goes through the Indian Ocean. Almost 90% of the global sea trade happens through the Indian Ocean, and that is essentially why Quad was established. So the establishment of Quad, if we have to analyze that decision of why these 4 countries essentially came together to form this international grouping and dedicate substantial resources to ensure smooth functioning of this grouping, it's a level 5 decision, and the building block that we analyze primarily is trade. So let's do an exercise. Let's take up a challenge. You can pick up any issue on this planet which we are either struggling with right now, or we have struggled in the past, or which you think we may struggle with in the future. Pick up any damn issue on this planet under the sky, and if you want, share it in the comments. I'll share my view in terms of how to analyze that, which levels of decision making should we study, and which building blocks should we focus more on. और you can share your view कि चलो ये इशू अगर देखना है तो हमें शायद ये लेवल ऑफ डिसीजन मेकिंग और ये बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक को देखना पड़ेगा, and let's have a fun engagement and let's have a fun discussion on any issue that you feel important, and let's see, maybe आगे बहुत सारा content उसी से निकल जाएगा, but I think it's almost 50, 60, 55 minutes into this video. I've realized one thing when I started shooting this video, I was extremely nervous. Yes, I have fumbled a lot. Yes, I have made a lot of mistakes. Yes, I have stumbled a lot throughout this entire video. But I've also realized that slowly and steadily I've gotten more and more comfortable throughout this entire video. And to be honest, I did not even realize that I've been talking for the last 55 minutes at stretch. So feels good. This was my day 2 from the मैं भी बनूंगा content creator challenge. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and I'm sorry if it's become a long and boring video, but I also hope that you find bits and pieces of this video valuable. To be very honest, as I said earlier, this entire challenge is a part of me wanting to become a better content creator, and I am going to keep all of these mistakes in this video. I am not going to edit anything out of it, because a few months down the line I want to come back to this video, see where I was and see where I've gone, measure the improvement I've done, and that's the whole purpose of doing this challenge. So if you're watching this video as of this moment, I'm so thankful that you have stuck with me for this entire period of time. I hope you've got something valuable out of this. I said in the yesterday's video as well, I strongly believe that time is the most important currency all of us have, and I hope watching this video was not a waste of time for you. If you liked watching this video, please hit that like button, and if you think there are valuable bits and pieces in this entire video, please do consider sharing this video with your friends and family. My name is Prathamesh. I am the founder of the Civilization Project. I am very happy right now. Thank you and see you next time.